Thousands of victims of the infected blood scandal will receive interim compensation payments of £100,000 each, in line with a recommendation made last month by the chairman of the public inquiry into the supplying of contaminated blood to NHS patients in the 1970s and 1980s. Simon Dedman reports.
When I found out, I didn't think I had a future. I didn't think there was anything to live for, because I knew I was going to get liver cancer. I knew I was going to die. I was seeing this in people that I knew, losing friends. However, I'm still here.
The effect of contaminated blood treatment on one person's life. There are tens of thousands like Ros Cooper. Around 3,000 people have lost their lives. Today, blood transfusions and treatment are very safe, but in the 1970s and 80s there weren't the checks or knowledge about hepatitis C and HIV. Patients were given blood products from donors who had those viruses. The government has announced it will provide interim compensation to around 4,000 victims and bereaved partners across the UK. They will receive £100,000 each. More people are coming forward, with an estimated 30,000 infected. For Ros, it's a day of mixed emotions.
It's a vindication of the work of the inquiry, and the fact that this is an interim compensation payment suggests to me that liability has been accepted by the government.
It's the first time in over 40 years that a British government has accepted that compensation must be paid to those caught up in this terrible tragedy of contaminated blood. However, although we very much welcome that this payment of £100,000 is going to the surviving infected and the bereaved partners, sadly, children who have lost parents and parents have lost children are not included.
Former health secretaries like Andy Burnham have given evidence into this scandal. He had supported the chair of the public for compensation.
On this one, the government has done the right thing. Far too late for many people, and this doesn't cover everybody, but this is the first step to truth, justice, accountability for the people who've suffered through no fault of their own.
Parents who lost children, children who lost parents, will not receive compensation as part of this announcement. Campaigners will continue to push for them to be included in these interim payments and for further payments once the public inquiry concludes. Simon Dedman, BBC News.
Let's speak to Tony Farrugia. He lost his father and both of his uncles due to contaminated blood. Tony, thank you very much for joining us. Just tell us a little bit about your dad and your uncles, you know, what they were like and how they got caught up in this appalling scandal.
Well, they were all mild haemophiliacs. They very rarely needed treatment for haemophilia due to it being so mild, and they were managed on cryoprecipitate until what appears to be the late 70s, when they were switched to American product, and all three, two were infected with HIV and hepatitis C, and my other uncle was infected with hepatitis C. All have since died. We welcome today's announcement by the government, but I think what a lot of people don't realise is that this only encompasses a very small group of the amount of haemophiliacs that died. As an example, in my family, my father and two uncles have all died, and my father's widow and my uncle's widow will today be included in this interim compensation settlement. But unfortunately, the other widow of my uncle has died, so that family are excluded. And I just think that seems to be what we're seeing across a lot of the haemophilia families due to it being hereditary. It's killed several lines of brothers within these families groups, and to see two family members receive support, compensation, and for one family not to, we think the government haven't gone far enough. And they do have a report from Sir Robert Francis with 15 recommendations, one of which was to make these interim payments to the infected now. But this report also states that children and parents of children and some other groups should also be included in this compensation. And the government haven't implemented that today when they could have done. They've had the report since March. So it's great, just bit of disappointment today for I know many families out there.
So having waited all this time, having seen people that you care about die, the wait goes on for some people. The campaign can't end.
That's right, yes, and I think the payments are not due to be made until the end of October, which will see at least another 16 people die. And I would ask now, if the government are listening, that they make sure that what has been announced today starts from today, so that if anyone should die between today's announcement and October, that their families will be included. And I think we need that, because, again, 16 people, possibly more, will die before these payments are made.
I mean, it sounds like a lot of money, £100,000 as an interim payment, but of course it's nothing compared with the suffering that's gone on and the losses that you've faced. What would be an adequate sum of money? Is it possible to put a figure on it?
Well, I think firstly what we need to look at here, and I think what the general public needs to look at, is what the government did, not what they're doing, because it seems to be very much focused on the government paying this interim payment of compensation, and not actually focusing on what they did and why we're here and why we're at this crossroads. You know, the negligence on the government's behalf. I mean, I'm hoping that today's announcement means that the government are accepting liability, and as far as compensation payment amounts, they should be in line with whatever the courts decide, or whatever the tariffs are set by the Compensation Framework Board that has been recommended by Sir Robert Francis. I think we have to go with that for now, and see where that goes. I know for many people it won't be enough. Many people have lost millions and millions of pounds in earnings, as well as the pain and suffering, which has been recognised by the government. So I can't really put a figure on what I think is adequate, but I think we just have to wait and see what comes from the framework and Sir Brian Langstaff's recommendations at the end of the inquiry.
So it's not just money, and it never is in circumstances like this, is it? It's an acknowledgement of what was done wrongly all those years ago.
Yes, definitely, and the cover-up as well. I think that people need to be held responsible for the fact that they covered this up and left so many families, so many sick families, continuing to fight for justice. And as I say, even today's announcement still leaves, I would say, probably more than 50% of the haemophilia population still fighting.
Tony, we appreciate you talking to us, and thank you for telling us a little bit about your dad and your uncles. Tony Farrugia, thank you.
Thanks very much for your time.
Pleasure, thank you.